Welcome back to Low Energy Leads Live. Today we are wrapping up our Selling Digital Products series. We've been talking all March and February about how people are selling digital products online, things like digital downloads, ebooks, even courses. And I've been asking this question of how are service providers doing this? Does it make sense for people to play across services and products? And that's what we're here to talk about today with Chris Nguyen of UX Playbook. Chris has so many different revenue streams. He's been a serial founder. I'm super excited that he's going to take us inside his business and show us what's been working, what's not, where all the money is coming from. I think so many of us gravitate towards a specific revenue stream, and that's what's really exciting about Chris is that he plays across them all. So let me bring Chris up and we'll get into it. Without further ado, welcome, Chris.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Thanks for being here so late on your side. Working out this time zone is always a trick. We appreciate it. I appreciate you also gathering so much data for us. And we're going to get into it. So tell us a little bit about UX Playbook and why you went this direction with your business, because you've done so many businesses.
Yeah, so UX Playbook was an experiment when I quit my job in 2020, and organically it kind of grew on its own. And in 2022, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to work on this and put more time into that. So that's when, the social media stuff happened. But really, UX Playbook is my attempt to fix the broken UX education, because it's confusing to get started. There's no real world preparation, and it's all focused on skills versus like career and growth. And we do this through playbooks, courses, coaching, and really to help designers navigate this fuzziness and turn it into focus. So that's really what I'm trying to do with UX Playbook. And again, playbooks, courses, and coaching. Those are the three things that we offer. And we try to basically encapsulate the whole career, from like building a portfolio, finding a job, to like design leadership. So this is my take on that space.
Yeah. Where did you, because you have so many different products and services and bundles and freebies, like there's like 12 things in these menus. What did you start with? What was like the launch product?
Yeah. So I started with one single guide. So it was, I believe, Product Persona. So it was one single guide for like, I had something like $3 or $4. I can't remember. And then that turned into UX Playbook, where there's 14 different guides, and then new playbooks like management, portfolio, all that stuff. But really, it just started with one guide. And when I was doing usability testing and just some like contextual inquiries with some mates, in the first week, someone bought it like randomly, because I had to basically put it on buy me a coffee just to test, like, would they click the buy button, and obviously not having them pay for it. And then someone organically bought it, and that kind of started off this like experiment to what it is now.
Yeah. You're like, oh, I can sell this. So I'm going to continue to do that. Love it. Okay. Cool. Let's get into what the revenue breakdown looks like now, and sort of how you're making money.
Absolutely.
From UX Playbook. Let me actually, there we go. So we've got 5 revenue streams that you're mainly working with now. Tell us about them.
Sure. So digital product is by far, I think, the most in terms of split of revenue. Then we have services, things like portfolio critiques, coaching. Then a new one that we introduced relatively recently, actually in Q4 last year, is sponsorship, right? As you create content, folks want to use you as a marketing channel. So sponsorship is a new one. Then we have affiliates. This is not affiliates of mine or UX Playbook, is actually affiliates of other products. So me trying to sell other products. This has not worked. This is such a low percentage. It's not even worth doing. It's under 1% of our revenue. So might as well just kick that off. And then there's a live cohort, which was another experiment. It's like, can we do it? Is it fun? But that was a revenue stream in Q3, but it's no longer, and I'm sunsetting that, but turning it into a digital product, because that's where most of our revenue is coming from.
Yeah. Okay, nice. So digital products, services, and sponsorships are like the main three, and then these other ones come sort of in and out.
Absolutely.
Why do you think I'm really curious about the affiliate thing because like people in job search mode are definitely buying stuff. Like, why do you think that's not working? We'll talk about that more, but I'm just curious now, like, why do you think that didn't work?
Maybe it's just audience product fit, and maybe I'm not selling or promoting the right stuff. So I'm using this tool called Sparkloop, and it's based on like newsletter referral affiliates, right? But affiliates from like tools that I promote, I have gained some revenue from that, but just based on the deal that me and these like brands have, that affiliate money is not mine. Like it's theirs, right? So it hasn't been as profitable. I bet it could be, just if it's like an awesome tool like Notion, for example, then I think that would make sense. But for some of these other like random one-off brand deals, nobody cares about this like obscure web builder that has no traction. So
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I love it. I'm fascinated by the affiliate thing because I think some people really make that a huge part of their pie.
mhm,
But not everyone is nailing as wide a revenue like span as you have. This is an impressive set. Okay. So let's talk about how this has shifted over the last 3 quarters. I can't
sure.
believe you pulled this data for us. We love you so much for it. Let me zoom in a little bit on these beautiful pie charts. Okay. So Q3,
Yeah.
tell us the picture in Q3. I'm going to move it into the
Yeah,
show.
Q3 is when I decided to launch the cohort that I did. It was a very relatively small cohort. It was like 6 people. So you can see it took up 22% of the revenue because it was in the thousands of dollars. So that kind of made sense. Sponsorship, we basically got one of our first times we got sponsorship. So that's a tiny, tiny percentage of the pie. Services was also not significant, I would say. But digital products accounted more than like 67% of what we did, right? Um, so that's what Q3 looks like. And then if you move to Q4, so Q3 was 11,000 ish dollars, and then Q4 we grew 78% to nearly $20,000. And 76% that was digital products. This is also awesome because it's at that time of the year when people are really trigger happy with Black Friday, and we can talk about that later. But a lot of that revenue, actually 50% of that revenue came from November, right? 20 grand in Q4, 10 grand came from November, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And that also coincided with sponsorship. I think in November that's when all the sponsorships were majority coming from. So we grew that because people knew that trigger happy shoppers. So that's why sponsors were also interesting. And then our service didn't really grow. Actually, it decreased in terms of revenue. Then move on to Q1, what we have seen that's grown, and we're on about 25K now, which is a 23% growth. Obviously, we haven't finished. We still have 2 weeks left, so fingers crossed we hit 30. But yeah, sponsorship has grown so much. And this is evident of me actually putting more effort into sponsorship
Yeah.
and reaching out to folks. But also, as you get more sponsors, of course, you have case studies of previous sponsors you work with, so you're just more credible in that sense. So this is why I think it has grown. Services has also ramped up to about 15%. Oh, sorry, 17%, and digital products only accounted for 50% of this. So I guess diversifying the revenue stream just a little bit more, so we're not just stuck on my digital products, because my digital products are a one-time purchase, right? It's not recurring revenue. So I always have to bring people into the door. But if we zoom out, Lex, and just look at the revenue over the last 3 quarters, split into a pie on the right. So in top place is digital products with about 63% of the revenue split, sponsorship with 22% ish, and then third place is services around 10%. And then the others you can kind of disregard because they're not that significant in my opinion. And yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the cohort being 5%, like I imagine the cohort is a ton of work. And that being 5%, like it's it feels like probably not didn't compare it to your labor on that.
Absolutely. The good thing is I recorded everything like multi-camera, and I'm putting together and turning it into, and I've done most of the work, 120 videos I'm on now, but turning that into a digital product because it's just so much easier, and it just requires less of me. But yes, a lot of work.
Yeah. And so what's your take on like, we talk about like diversifying revenue streams, and I think we feel like that makes us more resilient business owners, and in many ways it does, right? And you being able to play across all these different revenue streams does make you a more resilient business owner. But if you were going to like pick what this revenue pie looked like, what would you pick in terms of like percentage that you would put into each of these? Like, what would you want this picture to look like?
I want it to be like, oh, well, like, I think probably majority digital products. Like, I think that would be better, and sell less services because that's like my time, right? Sponsorship would be cool, but yet again, it's like having a client. You're providing a service to a client. So
Yes.
ideally, I would say digital products, right? In terms of the business, like even operating all these revenue streams, we're about 85, like throughout our whole like operation, we're 85% profitability, right? So we're running super lean, and we'll just be way more lean with digital products. I mean, I don't pay myself, so like that's probably why the margins are so good, right?
Why are you not paying yourself?
It's because I don't know. It's a interesting venture, so I'll just survive. And one day when I do pay myself, that means the business is doing way better than it is. Yeah.
So you're just pouring all this money back into the business. Are you paying other people?
Yes, I'm paying other people. I haven't really like thought about where I need to double down on. I'm still not sure, and until I'm sure, I'm not going to pour money into something that I don't know will work. Basically, right? Like I've tried ads for like 1 or 2 months, and that's just not a good place to spend your money. Yeah, in
Yeah.
my
Well, it
opinion.
goes back to like the marketing game you can win, and you're winning at a lot of these games, and then ads is like a whole complex thing, and some people win at that game, but some people it's really
Mhm.
hard, and then you're lighting your money on fire. Okay,
Right.
on that note, let's talk about what you've tried and what's worked and what hasn't. So you put together these beautiful lists for us. Thank you, Chris. Okay, what you've tried. The first thing on here is naming. Tell us about naming.
Yeah. So first, it was like UX Playbook, right? A collection of guides, and then my second product was UX Management Playbook, right? How do you train and build a kick-ass team culture, right? So then I was like, okay, that's interesting. They're still the same name, so naming and bundling is actually um, like they have a direct correlation. So first, when I tried to bundle the products, I said, okay, what about you can buy UX Playbook, you can buy UX Management Playbook, and you can buy UX and Management Playbook together. It's a bundle. But then I just called it that. Like I just said, you get UX Playbook and Management Playbook, and that's the name. But then, yeah, so it's just like what? That's the product name. But then when I changed it to like when I had more products, the junior designer bundle, the senior designer bundle, it like improved revenue so much more. It was a significant bump. I can't tell you the exact metrics, but we did see like it be like resonate with more like folks who are like, oh yeah, I want to be a junior, right? Or folks that I want to be a senior, or I'm already a senior. So I think naming your products based on the persona is super interesting, and for us it worked really well. So that's naming.
Yeah. Okay, great. Naming is so interesting because I think it can be hard to attribute. Did you isolate that as a test where you like, let's just change the name and see how this goes?
Yeah, I always do, let's just change it, see how it goes, because if it doesn't affect the bottom line, then I'm like, okay, well, just change it back. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I love it. Let's talk more about bundling. What is bundling and why are you doing it?
Bundling is crazy. So I started with a one guide thing, right? I had one guide. Okay. So then I sold 12 different products. Okay. And it was like, okay, if you want stakeholder interviews, or just get that thing. If you want wireframes, get that thing. And I was like, wait, why am I selling it like this? Okay, why don't I just bundle it into UX playbook? Just get the whole playbook and you have a bunch of different things. So that was my first attempt at bundling. And turns out we sold more of that because people just kind of wanted to save money instead of like ordering 12 different things, right? And so they just bought the bundle. Then I went further and was like, okay, well, can we bundle UX playbook and management playbook to target seniors, and growth playbook to target seniors, right? These are potentially what seniors care about. And then for the junior bundle, it's about finding a job, portfolio, how to interview, right? And then, of course, UX playbook being one of our core products, that's also in the bundle. So and then like you have these two personas that have different products. And then what about the everything bundle? And just so happens that we sell more of that than anything else because people just want it all for a cheaper price, right? So I've tried bundling in a bunch of different ways, and I kind of worked up like to bundling and be like, what can we bundle? What can we add? So I've done like another one, which is also related to naming, which is like the design like transition bundle that didn't really work out, or the job hunting bundle that didn't really work out, right? So these ones that stuck are the ones that actually sold, and I'm like, okay, well, that's what I'm just going to call it, and that's the configuration of the bundle basically.
It's interesting because I've been noticing this, like on one hand I think it's really like you're nailing this idea of like, I'm speaking to you, this is for you, the senior designer, the junior designer. I think that's a really interesting insight to be like, I'm describing you with this bundle name. But on the other hand, like I have this question about digital products, which is about packing too much into them, right? Because ultimately the outcome people want with you is like, I want to get better at my craft and I want to get better jobs and have a more successful career. And so like the idea of watching 130 plus videos is very daunting. So it's interesting that people are like, no, more videos, Chris, like I need more. That's fascinating. And I think like one of my questions about that, because I see some of your reviews here, is like, do you find people utilize it and then share it, comment, and like, and review?
So reviews, I don't really have. So like, obviously, I have a survey that people can fill out, right? And less than 10%, I think, has filled in a feedback survey for testimonials. But how I get it is just like I actively find it. If I find someone that comments on UX Playbook, then I would turn that into a testimony, or they put it in the DM or Slack or anything like that. So there's always opportunities to find that. But I haven't found, like, it's really hard to get someone to review your product. Like, even if it takes like 3 seconds, it's just, I don't know. I haven't found an organic way to introduce it because it's not like a video course where you can stop them and be like, do this thing and then watch the next video. It's just like browse around. If you don't stumble across it, I can't do it. Even if I send you email sequences, people just don't do it. So like a low percentage of my customer has reviewed. It's only when I've reached out, then that something happens, right? So that's how I've been getting it. Yeah.
Yeah. But even like the precursor to the review is like using the product, right? And I think one question I have about digital products is like, the more you put into it, the more they feel they have to do before they like review or share or like know. Even if like you're packing so much value into this that it's like obvious that if they did like one thing here, they would get value, right? But this question to me is like, is their perception that I haven't done it all, so I can't like give you a good sense of whether or not this is good, or I feel like I'm not ready to review. Like that's the thing that I've experienced with my stuff where people are like, oh, I haven't like gone through it all. And it's like, yeah, you're never going to. Like life is short, you're not going to. But you've looked at it, right? You've used a part of it. It's really interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting, Lex, because so like the business person in me says like it's all about perceived value, right? The reason you put 130 videos and 200 examples is because you say no, it's actually like there's a lot in here, and some consumers might be like, I'm not going to read that. And then most consumers are going to be like, whoa, that's value for money, right? If you can associate a number of like things, like the reason I have 93,000 words, I mean, I don't read 93,000 words. I've written it, but I don't read it. As in, like, I'm not just there consuming 93,000 words in one go. So it's kind of different, right? Like what's on the website to like how people use it. But I have got that comment a lot where I'm like, oh, tell me what you think about it. Like a week after, a month after, and people are like, oh, I'm not sure. Like, I don't know. And I think the interesting thing about my product is that they could forget about it for like a year, and then when they need it, they can come back to it, right?
Totally.
And it's
Yeah.
one of those like more I would say like timeless. It really depends on what stage you are in your career or what problem you're facing. Like if you haven't done a persona or a user journey in a while, but then you needed to do one, you can just pick that guide up, but you don't necessarily have a judgment on other stuff within that bundle. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure I'm answering the question right,
No,
but
you are. You are. I think it's like when we talk about like stepping off the marketing treadmill, which is the premise of my show, one of the ways that you do that is that people buy your stuff and then they love it and share it and review and sort of like help you spread the word in whatever way they do that, right? They write a comment or they share it in a community or they tell their friends about it. And so to me, like when you talked earlier about your revenue breakdowns and you're like, I want digital products to be the big piece of the pie, but also I recognize that it's a lot of sales labor on my part, Chris's part, right? One of the ways to reduce that sales labor is by getting your customers using and referring and amplifying on your behalf. And that's why I think, and as a UX designer, like getting them to use it is like part of the puzzle here. But it feels like that's happening because you do have reviews and you have over 600 designers that have purchased these. So that's really impressive. Tell us briefly about your audience building, because we talked about this when we started at the top of this call. And this is another big question I have with digital products, which is like, what's the minimum audience size? And you said you started 2 years ago with nothing, which is wild. Tell us what the last 2 years, like 2 years ago, where did you start in terms of your audience size, and tell us where you are now.
So I had 3,000 on LinkedIn, and before this recording, we're speaking about it before, like I wasn't really active on LinkedIn, right? It was just me like adding people in my local area that are UX designers, basically. It's just me like spamming folks, not really strategically doing it. So from 3,000 just on LinkedIn. So I think we have 53,000 across like the channels, if you will. So LinkedIn being our top, I think we are nearly 38. Twitter, we're about 5,000. Our newsletter about 6,000, and then some other platforms we tried that we've got like 1,000, but like it's not anything to write home about, like YouTube and TikTok and IG. We're just like, we posted for like 3 months every single day, and it just grew to 1,000. We're just like, this sucks. Like, and it wasn't proving a positive ROI, right? We had an editor, we had all of this stuff, and it was just like, it was a fun experiment. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think is making LinkedIn, like LinkedIn has taken off so much for you? Why do you think that is?
Honestly, I don't know. Just trying to figure out the LinkedIn game, like learning the rules. And I think one of the biggest things for us is like just be really active on it. Like with all the, I think it kind of rewards you. Not only is you get to meet really cool people like you, Lex, like I get to say hey, but I think the platform just rewards activity. And so I can't remember who said this, but if you post like once a day, your followers might see your post, right? That's it, maximum of one time a day. But if you comment on as many things, they might see you 60 times a day. So it's just the law of numbers, right? So that's why I spend at least 2 hours a day on LinkedIn. I don't really want to, because that's 2 hours of me not doing something else, but it's like, yeah, I think I want to get it to a point where I can just be like, okay, I don't need to go on LinkedIn. Like I can go 5 minutes a day, right?
Yeah.
That would probably be the point, or do more lives like this. But it's fun now. I just try to make a game of it and troll some people.
I love it. Yeah, you really have to pick a game that you can play, right? That you like want to continue playing and figure out how that's going to fit in.
Mhm.
Welcome, Rafi. We have like one person watching. Welcome. I have like no audience on any of these channels, and so I'm just fascinated by people who can build an audience anywhere. Okay, let's cover a few things that have really worked. We talked about naming, we talked about bundling. Talk about discounts because you mentioned November and Black Friday was big. Tell us about the discount strategy.
Yeah. So last November, and I did a brief check. We literally did so bad. Like, we did so bad last November, and it was like because Black Friday it wasn't in my mind, and I was probably busy doing something else. But then this Black Friday, I was like, okay, it's 3 or 4 weeks before Black Friday. I want to make sure everybody knows that something is going on. Like there's a sale, they can absolutely get a steal, and that was the strategy, right? So we new banners across all the social medias. The description was only about Black Friday, like your headline, right? So it's like the featured post, multiple email blasts. I think we did like maybe even like 3 or 4 leading up, and then like reminding people, and then last chance. So you really have to like the number one learning is just tell people that they can get a discount, right? Like it's as simple as that. And I just didn't do that last year, and yeah, but it doesn't always work because I did it again for Chinese New Year, but nobody cares about Chinese New Year, right? Like literally nobody cares, right? It's not known for to be the holiday that everybody's spending money in the West. In the East, yeah, everybody's like, broke by Chinese New Year. But so you got to pick your times, right? And for us, it makes sense because most of our audience, like I think 47% of our customers are from the US, right? So yeah, you just have to let people know.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell us about abandoned cart fast action discount within 24 hours. How does that work? What does that mean?
So yeah, so I didn't switch this on because I was too cheap. So what happened was like I got the midpoint of like Squarespace pricing because I was like, oh, I don't need the full thing. I'll just do this. But it didn't have this abandoned cart feature. And I was like, and then I finally was like, oh, let me just upgrade and switch this on. It didn't work straight away, but um it did start working for us. And what we did was we offered a discount. We just said, hey, if you put something in your cart and within 24 hours they don't buy, you send them an email, considered they given you your email, and you just give them a discount, right? And then if they purchase within that 24 hours of receiving that email, then it's registered as an abandoned cart. Sometimes they do it after, but in Q1 alone, it has been we converted 9% of the people that we could email, which is a great like conversion metric, right?
Yeah,
uh,
totally.
so it's actually worth it. And if I just look back at all the abandoned cart sales that we've got, it's basically paid for software for like 2 or 3 years. Like,
Yeah.
so it's a no-brainer just to have it there, even though you don't do much on it. Sometimes you can kind of adjust the email, adjust the copy. You can also customize it to that email address, right? You can put some of that email address and like a number or something, so it looks like a personalized code. And for folks, it just creates a bit more urgency, and they're like, oh, okay, cool, right? So abandoned cart works, and most of these tools out there has a function, so people, you should use it.
Yeah. So Squarespace had like a template, like they had a whole thing in there for you and you could customize it. Is that right?
Yes, yeah. You can't customize the discount code. You can customize the abandoned cart, like everything about the abandoned cart email, but you can use another tool to customize a code.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, okay, just to recap, we've got things that worked for you: naming, messing with naming, testing naming, changing naming. We spoke about the senior and junior designer bundles, bundling products and packing a lot of value in, discounts and flash sales, emails, which we didn't talk about. I'm going to skip over that, but that makes sense. Emails, you got blast to segment, product updates, newsletters, sequences, So emails seems like a big part of your strategy here. And then alongside that, abandoned cart, which is also tying into email. Let's talk briefly, since we're close to the end of our time, about what didn't work. I particularly want to hear about the wait list because a lot of people use Weightlist. Tell us about what you tried and what didn't work about it.
Yeah, I think we tried it twice. The first one was the second product. So I was working on a second product. It like product development, everything takes longer than you expect it to be. So I also think that if you want to do a wait list, you best be sure that it's relatively soon, because people are going to forget, right? Like the urgency they felt before, they don't feel now. So I think my wait list was for like 4 weeks, and that was way too long, even with a huge discount. So we had like 250 people on the wait list, which is pretty good for having a tiny, tiny audience back then. And I think we like converted like 2, maybe 3. I don't really remember. So I haven't really cracked this wait list, how to do it, how to cause excitement, and maybe I didn't do a good job of product updates during the wait list. So that is something for me. I'm still yet to crack it, but for us, it hasn't worked. So we've done 2 wait lists, and we're kind of not. Yeah, I'd rather do like a pre-sale than a wait list, to be honest, because I think that's just way better. People are more invested, and you can give a huge discount versus like, oh, you can get something later versus get it now and we'll just send it to you later. So we did that with Job Sprint. And yeah, we converted 5 people within the space of like a couple of weeks versus the waitlist never converted. So yeah.
So Job Sprint is still in pre-order right now. Is that right?
No, it's actually early access. So
what's the difference?
Yeah, exactly. So you can get the first 5 modules. Yeah. So pre-order is like, you can't get any of it, right? You're going to get the product soon. And then early access is like, hey, I'm working on it. And because this product took so long to make, like just hours of video editing, that I was like, no, I have to give people who's on the wait list a taste of the product. So I'm just going to do early access. So now they have access to 5 modules, which is, plenty of their time it should take up. And then I'm working on the last module now.
Oh, interesting. So it's just getting progressively released. And so is there a discount? Yeah. There's an early access discount.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I love it. I also think I think waitlists might be fading overall. Like look at like Blue Sky and Clubhouse and how much they killed their momentum by, messing around with that for too long. Mm-hmm. One last thing I want to cover here is the upsell services. You say upsell services didn't work and product downsells work better. Can you share more about that?
So I have 2 services on the website. One is this is also naming, where I had this product which is like 1 hour coaching. People are like, who cares about 1 hour coaching? Then when I changed the name to coaching workshop, people were like, I'll buy this. And I was like, what the hell, man? It's the same thing, right? Like I just phrased it differently because a workshop sounds way better apparently. But that's basically what we do in coaching, right? We jump on a whiteboard and we start figuring stuff out. So I changed the name of that. But anyway, so from these services, because it's like quite high touch, one is a 1 hour call, the other is I send a 20-minute video to you. I've built enough like trust with the customers that when I recommend a product there, it converts quite well, right? And it's usually a downsell because the products are less, right? Because services are always more expensive. So if I roast your portfolio and it's really bad, and I'm like, dude, just get the portfolio playbook. People usually get the portfolio playbook. That makes sense, right? It's like $69 or whatever it is. But it's harder to say, hey, you've just bought the portfolio playbook. Do you want to finish your portfolio and let me roast it? And majority of people are like, no, right? They haven't shown me that they would be like, oh, I'll prefer this other thing. And it's like, and I've tried to integrate it into the product as much as possible in terms of upselling services, because I know it's, we're solving the same problem here, right? A portfolio playbook to tell you how to do a portfolio, and then a review of your portfolio is like near enough the same thing. And it's more hyper-personalized here. So for us, it just hasn't worked. And I don't know what to do. And maybe it should be a more of a targeted approach, or maybe there's an integration of a video of some sorts. But for us, it just has worked. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there can be quite a bit of labor to take someone from a digital product and like upsell them into the next thing. And it's pitched, digital products are often pitched that way as like an intro or starter into like a services, especially for those of us who mostly make money through services, or in my case, a membership. And I found the same thing, that it's very hard to get those folks to go that way. And it's easier to get them to go the other way. And I think it might come back to the thing about this like self-talk that they have of like, oh, I haven't fully used the thing that I purchased, and I need to like do that before I engage Chris for a service. Whereas like people who've already been like, no, I'm going to start with Chris, then they're like, oh yeah, I also probably need this thing. The downsell thing is interesting. Amy Santee mentioned that to me as well, that that's the thing that she does off of her coaching work. And we heard about that in one of the other episodes. Quick last question for you. Freebies. Do they work for you? And if so, how so?
So, this is a good one for you, Lex. If you want to grow your audience, just give them freebies, like for the newsletter. Like, I'm serious, right? So this was a tactic that a lot of people use, right? And I think is more popular on Twitter. And that's actually the platform where I started. It's only when LinkedIn grew, then I switched to LinkedIn. So, but yeah, it's a great way to get emails and to grow your list. Whether or not convert, I can't tell you.
That's the problem. This is the problem
with,
like, I agree that they'll grow your list, but it's like, with who?
Right. Yeah, so I guess you can just assume that they're interested in the subject, but are they your customers? Probably not, right? But it doesn't mean they won't be your customers, right? Maybe they're just not ready for the thing that you're offering. So if they're on your list, they get your newsletter, and potentially one day they'll buy, and then you can also unsubscribe them if they don't interact with your newsletter after 6 months, and that's completely fine, right? Yeah. So it's a good audience builder, and so it's only until you actually put them into a sequence and you measure that sequence really carefully on did they convert or not, then So for us, it's like, well, we have this sequence and we've just redesigned this, but we haven't got we haven't set up the infrastructure to measure every single like click to convert. But we have seen a spike in single product sales, and for us, and the assumption is that because people tend to go for bundles, right? That's just majority of the sales, and if we just kind of broad stroke it, but single product sales is because we're actually really pushing it through our email list. So for now, I can't give you a straight answer of did it work or didn't, but it's like maybe it's the best answer.
Yeah. Well, you also have some freebies here that are pretty closely, like, this is a mistake I see a lot of people make with freebies, and I made this myself, which is like, one of my freebies was a referral toolkit, but I don't sell anything around referrals. My things are not necessarily like, it's just doesn't map as cleanly. And you have like the portfolio critique vault is one of your freebies here. And then you have a portfolio critique service, right? And then you have your bundles and playbooks that are aligned with that. And I think that's something you have to get right about it. And I think also, like, how are people learning about these freebies? Is it through things like LinkedIn?
Yes.
Or do you have good SEO?
I have decent SEO, but it doesn't really land on the freebies because it's really hard for those certain keywords. So, but yeah, usually it's from LinkedIn. I always plug it in the comments or carousels if it relates to the topic. So we have to be vigilant there and just tell people about it. But it's on the featured section as well. So yeah. And of course the newsletter.
Yeah. I've been doing like reverse freebies lately. So I give freebies to my newsletter audience, and like my hope there is that my existing newsletter audience will forward it and it will get more people on the list through shares instead. Sometimes I tease that stuff on LinkedIn, and I'm like, if you're on the newsletter, you're like going to get this stuff. Rather than like this freebie approach. I've just struggled with this so much. Like, I think it's awesome when it works for people. I've never I've gotten people on my list through this, but then they're just like, they tend to be low quality subs, even in terms of engagement, and then they tend to not buy. And so it's like, I just was like, I'm done with that. But I love that it's working for you. And I think what's really encouraging about this is just hearing like all of these different things that you've tried and how many of them have worked and how many revenue streams you've spun up in just 2 years, less than 2 years. We're not even to your 2-year anniversary with UX Playbook. Super impressive growth, Chris. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sure there's so much to try, or there's so much more to try and to grow it. Because I think the revenue stream is always really fun. It's basically just like a new project. Can you do this thing and does it work? And if not, let's go to something else. We definitely have not figured a lot of this stuff out. And I think it's, like some things that has or hasn't worked, like Product Hunt is a like hit or miss. There's things I want to try again and to see actually what happens.
Yeah, love it. Any last takeaways, things that you're taking forward for you for UX Playbook?
Cheaper pricing is completely counterintuitive. You thought so 1 month we made like the best revenue month back in 2022. We were like, oh my god, and it's because we had this portfolio playbook for $19, right? And that just sold like crazy, and we had our best revenue month. But then when I tried to experiment with the same concepts with like our bundles and stuff, like really cheap, didn't work, right? Like it was probably below average month, and it was just like, this is crazy. Like, why wouldn't people download a 93,000 word guide for like $99? So be careful your pricing. And that's the takeaway for the audience, I think, because pricing is such a sensitive subject. What's next for us is I am testing instead of a freebie or like a lead magnet, right? Something related to the product that you can upsell. I'm actually giving, let's just say 20% of the product for free. Oh, not free, $1, which is the job sprint. And seeing and letting people try it. And if they try it and they like it, they will buy the full thing. If they don't like it, they get the first module, which is 32 videos, 14 workshop activities, 4 in-depth guides for $1. And that's fine. And that's the most common problem I hear from designers, where it's like, I don't know how to stand out. Well, check out this course for $1. We already had 3 customers, but yeah, that's what I'm trying next. And we'll see if this kind of $1 trial works, because then if it does, I'm going to roll it out to other things.
Yeah. So are you selling, you have like an email sales sequence off of that? Like they buy that and then they get sold in the email. Okay. Mm-hmm. Oh, exciting. This is cool. I haven't heard that $1. I think I heard you talk about it in Slack, but I have not heard that trick before. Have you seen others do that?
I must have seen it somewhere. I definitely didn't make it up. I must have seen it somewhere, but I was like, oh, let's just do this. Yeah.
Yeah. Love it. Okay. Report back, Chris. I have your website up on the screen, uxplaybook.org, right?
Yep.
So folks can go there and check out all these different products. Thank you so much for coming and sharing all of this with us. Amazing learnings and such a wide range of tests. Like, so cool. I love it so much. I actually thought this episode was so great. I think I'm going to release it as a recorded podcast version as a bonus episode in this series, because just chocked with value, like so good. And we really appreciate it, because it's hard to get creators to talk at this level with these things. I feel like people just gloss over it. They're like, oh, you just do that, and it's like a piece of cake. But you, like, I think having so much wins, but also being like, yeah, this thing that everyone else said was working for them, like, didn't work for me at all. It's really refreshing, Chris, and we appreciate it.
No, awesome. I don't speak about this stuff as much as I want to, and I think it's always good to share how the sausage is made. And sometimes when I think about it, I learn something, because I'm like, oh, why didn't I do the thing that worked? So now I have a place of like things that worked that I can kind of take home and be like, let's do more of that stuff. And maybe that's where I could put some of the money back into the business.
Yeah, exactly. We love to hear it. Thanks for being here. Thanks for your time. Everyone else, great to see you. Thank you for coming. And thank you for listening. I'm excited to see where people take their own digital products, because it's exciting to hear from you that there's so much opportunity. It's inspiring for someone like me who really struggles with this revenue stream. And I'm sure it's inspiring for other folks. You've got some love coming in to the comments. Have a great weekend, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We'll see you next time.